Trojan fans, welcome to another edition of the Peristyle Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Abraham, joined alongside my partner in crime, Mr. Triple Double himself, Connor Morrissette. We are in the same studio, and this time we are live on our YouTube channel. I had a complete meltdown of the main computer, and somehow between my travels, I got it to the repair shop, got it fixed. Basically, the second hard drive where I had a lot of data was stored is just gone, but replaced. I was like, I don't know what's going to be broken if I had anything over there I needed, but it's working, and we're back live. You can see our faces again. I know, unfortunately for all of you, but you can.
Yeah, love it. Glad the computer issues are fixed now. Sorry you lost some stuff. That's disappointing, but it's good to go live. Good to get the people on YouTube interacting with us again. Hello, everyone out there.
Yeah, welcome to the show. We are live on our YouTube channel. If you have any comments, like Mark loves to come in here, we'll put his comment up first. He's like, hello, Ryan and Triple Double. Yeah, so if you have comments or questions on the YouTube channel, you can put those in the chat. And I will, while I'm hosting and talking, I will try to find some funny ones or good ones, and I'll put them up on the screen. Or if you have a question, you can put it up there too. As always, if you want to email us, that's where we get the most questions. podcast@uscfootball.com is the email address. We got a couple to get to today. You can also leave us a voicemail if you want to do that, hear your voice, or shoot us a text. And the number for both of those is 424-254-9141. You're either watching on YouTube or listening through some kind of podcasting app. If you have the Apple podcasting app, or if you have Spotify, you can leave us a 5-star review there. That'd be awesome. That does help grow the show. And if you have an Apple device, you can leave us an actual review, not just a rating, but a review. We did get a new one. It looks like a week or so ago, but from Bo442, it's a 5-star review.
Woo!
He says, great pod. I enjoy listening to the podcast while working, so thank you. I like all the different podcasts outside, of the Triple Double, only because I don't watch basketball, but root from afar. This is the best place for USC athletics info, so thank you and fight on. That's
okay. Hey, you don't got to love basketball.
Yeah.
It's USCfootball.com. I get it. No hard feelings. Thank you for the review.
Yeah, Mark says he's always here, which he is.
Thank you, Mark. Shout out, Mark. Great fan.
Thank you, Mark, for doing that. Yeah, thanks for everyone if you're watching live in the chat. This is great. Sorry again, last week. We tried. It was sort of this last-minute thing, and that did not. We weren't able to do the regular show. We got to play, do all the regular stuff, but not the YouTube portion of that. So thank you for joining there. We got a lot of fun stuff to get to. Before we do, just want to thank our sponsor, Trader Joe's. If you're watching, I know you're a Celtics fan.
Oh yeah, big game tonight. Game 3. Game
3 is tonight. Game 2, if you're watching, they were showing a lot of the celebrities that were at the game, one of them being the former Patriots head coach, Bill Belichick.
Yes.
And I noticed this, and I texted my buddy at Trader Joe's. I think he was in a suite or something, and he had one of the bags of like the chocolate-covered pretzels like right next to him. I'm like, yeah, you're retired. I would eat those things all the time. So it was fun to see like Trader Joe's represented in that game. But I love going there. A lot of great stuff. I mean, I love the snacks and everything. But I've been traveling a lot, so I've had to like hold off and restocking because I'm not going to be around that much. So I got to get back in there and restock things. But yeah, I'm looking forward to my next Trader Joe's trip. And I definitely got to get those pretzels, especially because Bill Belichick was eating them. So they must be good.
Great marketing from Bill. Shout out Bill. He got back from Croatia. He did a big Croatian trip, and he was honored across the pond. Got a lot of time on his hands now. I'm glad he's spending some of it at Trader Joe's.
Yeah, no, I wonder if it was provided by the suite or if he brought them in or whatever. But yeah, but I texted my buddy. I'm like, did you see that? And he's like, I got to go back and look. I'm like, yeah, man, it was like those Trader Joe's pretzels are right there on the broadcast. So game 3 is tonight.
Yes. 5:30 Pacific.
5:30 in Dallas, this one.
In Dallas. Kristaps Porzingis, is he going to play? Is he not going to play? I don't think he will, but he could.
Yeah, he's some weird leg injury, and Luka's got some injury too, but
he
played.
He's battling a lot of stuff. We'll see. If the Celtics win tonight, I think they'll sweep them.
Yeah, it'll probably be over for tonight. We'll see. Kyrie was really good in some parts, but he just hasn't been very good.
He's bad in Boston because they hate him so much. And I don't. If I had 50,000 people mad at me, I don't think I could play a good basketball game either. So I don't really blame him.
All right. So what we're going to talk about today, we had some good ideas from Connor. We got some questions, like I said, to get to. But take a look at the transfers that have come in the spring and to kind of give a little bit of evaluation of that. And, if you listen to the Composite Two-Star Recruits podcast with Gerard and Chris, with Gerald and 18K, the inside joke there, you will get a good idea of what the heck's going on. And it was a huge recruiting weekend. I think 19 official visitors coming in? You also were at USC for a camp.
Yes.
Got some, we can kind of pick your brain about that. This is higher level recruiting stuff. We're not going to dive into the depths of Gerard Martinez talking 10 minutes about a tweet some guy sent or whatever. But we'll get into it a little bit too. And then a little preview, Big Ten Media Days. Big Ten Media Days. Multiple days, not like the Pac-12. And the Big Ten with 18 teams. But yes, we're going to talk about that. Connor and Chris and myself will all be there in Indianapolis, Indiana. So if you have any questions about any of that stuff, we can get into it, and we'll kind of broach all those topics like I mentioned. You got your new T-shirt on?
Yep. And I wore my other one yesterday at the camp, and a lot of kids come up to you when you're wearing the 247 sports stuff, and they say, hey, can you help my ranking?
Yeah, no, that happens a lot.
And I just say, nope, but thanks for coming up and introducing yourself. The funny thing about those camps is it's a lot of lower profile high school guys who have that chip on their shoulder, and they're just trying to get every advantage they possibly can. Maybe they get on the coach's radar, come up to talk to us. And I respect the hustle. I like those guys who come up and think maybe I could help them out. A lot of times the answer is no. The best thing they could do is just play well. Then maybe I'll write them up. But I always really appreciate that and enjoy that. Now that I have all these shirts, that's been happening a lot more.
Yeah, it does. It does happen a bunch. I know I wore like one of my new polos last week, but we weren't on camera, so you couldn't tell. And you wore one of your shirts and stuff.
Yes.
Too. One of the things about camps, maybe we'll get into that one first. We'll kind of get some of your thoughts of what you saw down there. When we're able to observe players at camps, that sometimes it's limited of what you can kind of take away from it. They're just in shorts and T-shirts and things like that. But there are little things that you can kind of see. Some of it is interacting with other players, with coaches, even with the media. What are they doing? When you see people, there's a long line and guys are like sort of nonchalantly letting people get in front of them and they just don't really care to take the reps, or they're like trying to get to the front of the line, cutting people, finding who the best player is in the opposite them and like lining up. You can tell those guys are dogs. Like they want to they're there to perform, and they're trying to get as many reps as possible, play against the best people possible. Like those little things I like when I'm going to a camp like that. I like watching just to kind of see sort of like it's like the interview process when you're drafting like NFL players and stuff. Like, what do they talk about? What are they talking about off thing? What are they like? And they want to get the whole background. But observing those guys at camps, like not just what they're doing, but how they kind of carry themselves is always kind of interesting for me.
I totally agree. And I think the coolest thing from yesterday was we got to see a lot of the USC assistants actually coach through drills, and it wasn't just the 10-minute period that we get when we cover the normal USC practices. And Ryan, I thought Doug Belk had the most interesting comments. He was coaching up the safeties at one point, and Chris and I were watching, and he tells them, guys, you don't have to be perfect in college. There's only 5 good quarterbacks nationally. A lot of quarterbacks are going to make mistakes, so we want you to be as close to perfect as you can, but you don't have to be perfect because the quarterback play isn't great. And then he said, the same thing is true in the NFL. There are only about 8 really good quarterbacks. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to compete. And that to me sounded like something Nick Saban would say, a defensive backs coach by trade, a guy who's obviously had a ton of success, but Doug Belk learned under him, and that just sounded like a Nick Saban line. The quarterbacks aren't great, just compete, and there's a really good chance you're not going up against one of these elite guys and you'll be able to make a play on the ball. I thought that was a fascinating bit of coaching, and it was cool to get that insight because we don't hear a lot from the coaches during the season.
No, that is really cool. Well, was the camp mostly like sort of these guys that you don't really know that they were just like paying money, or there was a few kind of standout guys like USC level guys, or what was that the kind of distribution like?
So the biggest standout kid was a 2028 quarterback from Florida, Jaden Wade, who was working pretty closely with Lincoln Riley during some of the one-on-one drills where the quarterback would throw to
2028.
Yeah, a receiver who was being covered by a defensive back. So that's way down the line. And if you play it out, Miller Moss, and then hopefully Julian Lewis, and then hopefully Ryder Lyons, and then I guess hopefully if USC ends up offering him, Jaden Wade would be that next guy. Way too early to make any kinds of projections for 2028 quarterbacks, but it was nice to see Lincoln Riley work with Wade, who'd been at the camp last season. He was probably the biggest name. There were a couple of other high school guys who were lower 3 stars working to get noticed by USC. Overall, though, Ryan, it was about 170 kids and not really too many elite guys. So it was just better to catch up with some of the coaches for our sake and just watch them and observe. And I really enjoyed watching Wade. I know Gerard did too. He's sort of been all over him. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little recruiting update from Jaden Wade with Gerard at some point too.
I think someone posted on the P about they had gone and observed, but they saw some of the players that were around.
That's a good point too. We saw Miller Moss, we saw Christian Pierce, Anthony Beavers, Jacoby Covington. There were a good amount of players out there too.
Yeah, he was commenting on some of the linemen looking a lot bigger and things, and so that's just to kind of get a feel for this is a weird offseason for USC because usually there's more glitz and glamour and maybe more flash than substance. And this is sort of a more behind-the-scenes substance offseason with bulking up, getting better on the coaching staff, things like that, where that really hasn't been USC. Now, we'll see if it plays out and oh, wow, they look a lot more competent. They're looking like they can, those little things that were going wrong last year aren't anymore because you have better decision makers and guys are a little bigger and stronger and all that. And that can translate to wins, and we'll see if it does. But it's definitely a different offseason feel where it's more like just kind of wait and see. One of those teams that's like maybe not the big, right now, like the Ohio States of the world, like there's a lot of schools out there that have been super flashy in the offseason. And not that they didn't have substance. I think Ohio State has a lot of substance. USC has been more about the substance side, which not really been their kind of DNA over the years. It's been more about the flash and stuff. And then when it comes to the substance, it just was lacking.
A stark contrast to last season where I still cringe, Ryan, thinking about when we went down to lunch with all those USC fans and we were both going on and on about how good the team was going to be. Yeah. We were so convinced that they were going to be good, and everyone was convinced they were going to be good. They had such a high ceiling, and it just didn't click. This season, which I think is better, they have a lot to prove coming off of a disappointing year. New quarterback, new defensive staff, a lot of new players up and down the roster who are going to be contributing a lot more. So in that regard, it's really fun, and it's nice that they're able to sneak up on teams potentially instead of being that team that everyone's going to come and be gunning for. I know a lot of USC fans would probably prefer to be that juggernaut preseason, have the really high expectations, but I kind of like where they're trending right now. You got to go out and prove it. You got to go out and earn it, and we'll see if they do.
Yeah, it's funny. So Bud Elliott's doing his summer school breaking down. He gets someone from every major program on his show on the Cover 3 podcast. I'll be recording the USC segment tomorrow, so I don't know when he'll end up putting it up. Usually it's pretty quick. I'm in the intro for that. If you listen to that, I'm talking about Alex Grinch in his intro. But anyway, he goes through and you start listening to it. Like they had the Penn State, Penn State was on recently, and there's schools on USC's schedule that are like potential playoff contenders. And I think USC would be in that realm too, if you could take care of your own business. Like Notre Dame, their roster looks really good. Like, will they be able to take that step forward and make the playoff? Because it's a 12-team playoff now, so you have a lot of opportunities. I think USC is in there. Penn State is a potential one of those. Can Michigan get back there? There's a bunch of schools, LSU, and you're like, well, if LSU and Michigan and Penn State and Notre Dame all make the playoffs, like USC's not making the playoffs probably. But if USC is able to win like 2 of those 4 games or something, then they have a really good shot at making the playoffs. And probably if you beat Penn State at home, like they might not make it. So when you're hearing the experts talk about these specific programs, and USC is sort of a note on it, like, well, Penn State's got this road game at USC that could be interesting. It's so important, right? Like, what these things could do. So I feel like that USC doesn't have like the what looks like the 2 most talented teams in Ohio State and Oregon on the schedule in the Big Ten, which is good. Washington rebuilding, Michigan rebuilding, but they were the national champions. So, I mean, a lot going on there. But there's still a lot of potential here, but just hearing what the other schools are saying too, it's kind of like a lot of schools that have potential. USC's playing a bunch of them. And if you can win half of those games, I think you have a pretty good shot.
Put up or shut up. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Great point about not having to play Ohio State or Oregon. But then the negative is you got LSU and Notre Dame in the non-conference.
Yes.
Those teams are probably not quite as good as Oregon and Ohio State on paper. Notre Dame potentially could be better than LSU, and we'll see how it all shakes out with them and Riley Leonard and that defense. So I'm just, there's so many unknowns, Ryan, and I always go back to the line of scrimmage. How's the offensive line going to be for USC? How's the defensive line going to be for USC? On paper, a few really good players, Jonah Monheim, Bear Alexander, the best players on their respective sides of the ball, but the depth isn't great, and it's a lot of guys who you're going to rely on who didn't have a big role a year ago, and to me, what happens on the line of scrimmage, I've said it on the show before, that's really going to determine the ceiling on the season. If you get great play there, I think you have a chance to have a special year. If you don't, it could look like last season.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Well, you know what? We want to go over the spring transfers, but I think since we already started talking a little recruiting, maybe we'll go over the last couple weekends that were some big recruiting weekends. We did have a question from Joe in the chat. He's very confused. He says, how come USC had 3 emojis?
Hey, great question.
But no one else has committed. They did get one commitment, local
Hayden Lowe
edge
from
rusher.
Oaks Christian.
I'll pull him up on the screen there. Hayden Lowe did commit. So that was one of the emojis. We don't know nothing public on the other 2, but I don't know if you want to comment on that, Connor.
I think USC, I don't want to say they got played because they still could get a couple other commits, but I know at least one kid, Gerard, I was talking to him last night, tells USC one thing, and then it sounds like he took a trip somewhere else and told that staff the next thing. I don't fault USC for putting up 3 emojis if they got 3 commits. I think that has more to do with just the state of recruiting and the state of being a really good high school football player. Being young, you might tell a staff, hey, yeah, I'm going to commit, and then a week goes by and you change your mind. So they still did get that commitment technically, but I don't know if we're going to see 2 more anytime soon. It sounds like one of these guys still has some work to do. I do think another one is going to pop at some point, which will be good. But I think overall, why did they tweet 3 and where are these other 2 going? I'd chalk it up to just kids being kids, saying one thing and maybe deep down not quite being ready to honor that commitment. So it's frustrating, but I don't blame USC for tweeting it out. It creates buzz. We're talking about it. People are excited. And technically, I think these kids did tell him that, hey, I'm going to commit. But people change their mind. We see it all the time in life, not just high school recruiting.
They changed it. Blackie Chan says silent commits?
Yeah, and that's a part of it too, but that gets so sketchy.
Commits are tough. I mean, commits don't mean a ton. They mean something. Silent commits are like...
So the 2-Star Recruits podcast, love those guys to death. Talking about recruiting after signing day, I love. Right now, talking about it and discussing silent commits when you don't even know if a kid who is committed is going to eventually sign. A silent commit, I have no time for those.
Yeah.
You're either in or you're out. A silent commit is, I think, stupid, honestly. Like, yeah, oh, we got this kid. He's silently committed. Okay, you're so committed to the cause. Tell everyone. What are we waiting for here? So if you want to get some silent commit analysis, I'm not the guy to do that, I don't think.
Yeah, so ton of official visitors.
Yeah.
The biggest one being Juju Lewis. I'll put some of his photos up here. You got to talk to him, right?
I did. Chris caught up with his dad.
Okay.
But I've talked to some people around the program, and Ryan, a lot of what we said last week I think is aged really well. Don't lose to Auburn. Don't lose to Colorado. Don't lose to Indiana in this saga. It sounds like Lincoln Riley after this weekend feels really, really good about Julian Lewis eventually signing with USC. But he didn't shut it down. He's still going to take these other visits to Colorado and Auburn. And one other source close to the program on the collective side said, I don't feel quite as good as I did the week before. So it all goes back to me, Ryan, about what we said last week, where it seems like there's just a lot of cooks in the kitchen. There's a lot of people on the rowboat, and I don't know if everyone is rowing in that same direction where you get the coaching staff feeling one way and then the recruiting team doing maybe something a little bit different, and then you have people on the collective side. I don't think there's this really a real synergy with the strategy with some of these top level guys. And I don't want to criticize Lincoln Riley for not having this synergy when the number 6 class in the country is USC's right now based on the 2025 commits. We'll see what happens. But I think we got to get everyone rowing in the right direction, everyone on the same page. I just heard some things, especially in the Lewis recruitment, where, okay, Lincoln Riley feels really good about it, but people on the collective side who are doing some behind-the-scenes negotiations don't quite feel as good. And I would prefer everyone be on the same page. You have the recruiting team, the coaches, the NIL people. Hey, big meeting before. Here's the plan. When they ask this, we say this. Everyone together. And I just don't get the feel. Maybe they tried to do that. I don't want to speak for exactly what's going on behind closed doors. But talking to some people around the team and around that recruitment, it just sounds like it's a little bit all over the place. And you get some people saying one thing, some people saying another thing. They're not really all in uniform. And hopefully as time goes on, that continues. If USC is able to land the number 6 class in the country, I think they'll have worked a lot of these things out. They got to hold on to a lot of these commitments right now. If Lewis holds on, then you're going to get a lot of good players who want to play with him. So it's just such a big deal to lock him down, and they clearly still have some work to do in that regard. That's what I'm hearing. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think, having him in with so many other top recruits, I think matters. You want to show him, if you're Lincoln Riley, you're going to try to surround him with amazing talent, and these are the kind of guys we're going after. So it was a big showing there on the USC campus. I think one of those things where, USC is still playing catch up in the NIL world, and I think everything we've heard from all the different factors, it's going in the right direction. Can it get there? If you were going to go up against like Oregon, Ohio State, or something right now, it might be tough to keep a guy, but and Auburn's going to have, they have a big war chest there. There's going to be money coming into Indiana. There's a lot of buzz around, Coach Prime and Colorado. But like you said last week, you should be able to beat those,
especially at the
schools.
Quarterback spot.
Yeah, and that's the one thing where, like we talked the analogy of the amazing drink, the mixologist there that can do an awesome old fashioned. We know Lincoln Riley can make you an awesome old fashioned. At the end of the day, like if it's a little cheaper at the bar down the street or what, there's some, they're doing, they have a live band over here. Like at the end of the day, you're like the quarterback. You really want, the most important thing is for you to come out there and potentially be the number 1 pick in the draft. And no one's done that better than Lincoln Riley. So this is, I think, the one recruitment that even if all of USC's ducks were not in a row, from the recruiting team, from the coaching staff, to the collectives and all that coming together, this was one you could potentially still win, which makes it that much more important that you could fall somewhat short or significantly short of the kind of money that another school would give. But with the Lincoln Riley factor, the quarterback factor, you should still be able to win a lot of those battles. So if you lose it, it's showing that maybe you aren't as close, because if it's somewhat close, if you're in the ballpark, you should win, right?
Absolutely.
Everyone's different.
And that's what I heard last week. The ballpark will get it done.
Yeah. And if you lose it, it means you weren't in the ballpark for this highly ranked, like a player that you should have, circling the wagons around, getting every resource possible. You needed to keep your powder dry for this one, right? You needed this guy. And if you weren't able to do it, I do think it's going to be, it shows that there is a problem, an internal problem, that something else needs to get fixed here. Like, you're making improvements, but if you weren't able to land this guy, you had it on the football side. The football side was just signed, sealed, and delivered. You just needed to be in the ballpark. You didn't have to win. You just had to be close. And if you can't do it, that's a bad sign. My gut is that he's going to come in. I think even when Caleb Williams, committed to USC, there was some thought that he might go somewhere else, and it was like Wisconsin or I don't know. There was all these other things going on, but he ends up at USC. He wanted to follow Lincoln Riley. I kind of feel like the same way with Juju Lewis. I don't know if you feel that way.
I do eventually feel like he will stick with USC just because the other teams involved. It's not an Oregon. It's not an Ohio State. It's not someone who there's this track record of these massive NIL deals and they're going to get this player no matter what. Those schools just aren't in the mix here. So Colorado has some money to deal with or to play with. It sounds like Indiana too, and of course Auburn does. So we'll see what happens going forward. Just going back to my point about synergy too, I think we hear people on the collective side, okay, this big court case comes down, we can now negotiate with high school recruits, and USC is going to do that. And then some time goes on and you hear, well, the coaching staff, they'd rather give more money to the transfer guys who are more proven college players than the high school players. And there seemed to be a little bit of a disconnect in that regard. You have Justice Terry committed, the 5-star defensive lineman from Georgia. You got Julian Lewis committed. If those guys eventually don't stay with USC, then I think the coaching staff still having those fearful thoughts about negotiating with high school recruits probably have won out, and USC isn't playing the game the way a lot of people thought when we see the collective people say, oh yeah, we're going to start negotiating with these high school guys. So I think that'll be a big tell. If you can't hold on to those 2 top commits in the class, there's a reason for that, and I think it'll be because of the coaching staff.
Yeah. We did have a comment or question from Carter. Why are we worried about NIL? If the school can pay now, is USC still stuck in the mud? How is the collective not confident about Juju Lewis? I mean, this is like Connor said, it's not just the collectives. It's the coaching staff has philosophies on this too. This is a whole new world, and different schools they're very good. The whole range. There are people that are, how in are you on this? And there's some schools that have been really out front and doing this from the beginning. And, that's paying dividends. If you ignored all the rules in the beginning and you
I was hammering and yelling.
It's like you want to ask for forgiveness, not permission. The people that were waiting, ask for forgiveness. They were the ones that they benefited from all this. So it's crazy right now. So I don't. You're making calls on what you think things could be or should be. So it's not just the collectives, though. Like Connor said, there's, what does the coaching staff want? Maybe they don't want bidding wars with high school 5-star players. And you could say that's the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do. There's certain schools that are going to drop bags for anyone they need and sort of worry about, repercussions or whatever later. So I think some of that too is well, how important is this? And USC was one of those schools, and I think under Nick Saban at Alabama, there was that Nick Saban discount. They didn't have to pay as much as Texas A&M was going to pay a guy because they have the proven track record already. Now with Kalen DeBoer, they're probably paying as much as that, but you're not used to it. And I think USC over the years, they were sort of just used to being able to get the guys they wanted and stuff. You didn't have to put in all this extra effort or, paying these guys. Well, now you have to. So it's definitely a change in philosophy. Just the general sense of how you would recruit has changed. And the money aspect of it, especially for the schools that didn't fully embrace it from the beginning. And the schools that didn't fully embrace it were probably already doing it. And they're sort of used to this already. The slower to adapt, and USC I think would be one of them, you're still playing catch up right now. So I think it's not just the collectives. There's everything behind the scenes. I think there's money there, but how do the coaches want that money to be distributed? Like you said, is it going to be more transfers? Do you want them to prove themselves more? Yeah, there's a lot of factors kind of going on right now, and no one has all the right answers. But there are some schools that have just been, basically if you have a lot more money to hand out to high school players, you're probably doing better at this point.
And I totally get the cons too. Say Julian Lewis is paid, I'll throw out $1 million.
Yeah.
And Miller Moss returns to school, beats him out fair and square in camp, and he's the quarterback, the starting quarterback, and Lewis making all this money, potentially more than Miller, is behind him. That isn't good for the locker room, and maybe Lewis opts to transfer, and then you're out of all this money that really could have helped the roster in other ways if you're giving a guy a lot of money to never play it down. But the evaluation and the projection is the evaluation and the projection. And if you think Lewis is going to be really, really good and will potentially quarterback you in 2025 and has this orbit where if he's at USC, other really talented guys want to play with him and will join him, and that will trickle down to the 2026 class, and you're in love with his ability, you think he's really, really talented, you really feel strongly that he's the guy, I don't understand why you don't do everything in your power to get that player on campus and then worry about the rest of the stuff later. Maybe you're setting yourself up for failure in an uncomfortable spot if Miller comes back. I totally get that. Jaden Maeva would be in the mix too. But to me, this recruitment just seems like a massive one in the Lincoln Riley era at USC because the pros are so big. You get this potentially NFL-ready starter for 3 years, a really, really talented kid, and then he brings with him a bunch of other recruits. That's something that would appeal to me if I was a coach and would be something that I would risk my tenure on because I feel so strongly about his evaluation. But maybe they don't. If they don't feel so strongly about it, he goes somewhere else. They use the money elsewhere. I'm not going to hammer the staff if they don't feel like he's worth what he thinks he's worth. So I get why it's not crystal clear to just throw all this money and say this is what's going to happen. You got to think logically about both sides of it. To me, I've watched Lewis a lot. I think he would be worth it, and I really like the pros. But if they don't do it, I get it.
Yeah. I mean, just because you spend money doesn't mean – I mean, until this year, like the Yankees have spent a lot of money. The Dodgers spent a lot of money this year. I mean, Texas A&M a couple of years ago spent – and they had the number one class we've ever seen. They've spent so much money. And most of those guys are gone, and they didn't really do anything. So – but this is one you could say this is one you need. Like, I don't think you would worry too much about locker room stuff. If whatever you got to put together, you put together for a guy like this to come in because of all the other benefits that he would bring. Like, were there concessions made for like Caleb Williams? I think he comes in, and even as a transfer, people kind of knew right away, like, this guy's leading us. And,
but he'd already had a great year at Oklahoma where Lewis is more of an unknown. And I think people, and myself included sometimes, it's like, just get this recruitment done. It's Lincoln Riley. It's a 5-star quarterback. Why is this so hard? Well, financially, does it make sense? If a kid could just up and leave and take the money and run. Not saying that's what's going to happen, but Malachi Nelson never plays one game at USC and was this 5-star guy projected to do all this, and he just leaves. I don't know how much NIL money he received. It's a little bit different now. It's like that situation on steroids with Lewis because there's just a lot more money and the rules are a lot more lax. So I totally get it, and it's just fascinating to see what will happen. I think if he does sign, then the coaching staff will be all in, and the money will be there. If he doesn't, I don't know if it's totally going to be a money thing. Maybe it's an evaluation thing too. We'll see.
Yeah. There were some other official visitors. Andrew Mars came in, Riley Wormley. There was a bunch of other guys. Like anyone, any players you want to kind of give a high level talk about from they coming in over the weekend? Or
I talked to two guys who I think are probably on the outside looking in terms of are they going to commit to USC or not. I'd say 25 or 30% chance, probably a 70% chance they go somewhere else. So Max Granville is a hybrid linebacker edge rusher who's currently crystal balled to Oklahoma. He visited USC and really enjoyed it and is certainly in the mix with the Trojans, but he is taking that Oklahoma visit last. It was great to catch up with him. He said Taylor Mays had a really, really good presentation about all the NFL talent historically at USC and how if you want to play in the NFL, there's no better place than USC. And Granville, he talked to me all about how he eventually wants to get in the NFL, and that meant a lot to him. Then I talked to another kid from Texas, Dalen McCutcheon, a wide receiver. He's a little bit of a wild card to me. He has some really good offers. He's visiting Ohio State too, I believe. It seems like USC's in the mix, but they maybe are prioritizing some other receivers a little bit more right now, so that's one to watch. I think if USC really were to pick up their interest there, they could certainly land him, but that's all to be determined. Riley Wormley's committed. He is the running back who's also from Texas. It seemed like he had a great visit after reading the story by Gerard. Noah McHale visited, the Bonita linebacker. Gerard, I know, thinks he's a barometer recruit for this class. If you get him, things are trending in the right direction. If not, if he goes to Oregon or Texas A&M, that's a player who USC's been recruiting for a really, really long time, a really talented kid who's been atop the rankings for a long time. So that's a recruitment that I think is really interesting, and he didn't commit. He still has some more visits to take. Talked to Gerard last night. He said Texas A&M might be leading right now, so that'll be another thing to watch. Those are probably the biggest takeaways, but there are a lot of really good players there, Ryan, especially on offense. A lot of really talented receivers, Corey Sims, Andrew Marsh, like you said. I always feel like with Lincoln Riley and that offensive staff, they'll be good. Now you got Eric Henderson, who's recruiting really well on the defensive side of the ball. Doug Belk doing the same. I'm excited to see what this class looks like when it's all said and done. For sure.
And like we said, Juju Lewis probably a key to all that. And I think, it's funny when we see fans talking about like the recruiting against Auburn, like they lost to like New Mexico at home or New Mexico State or something like that, whatever it was. And I think sometimes fans are shocked that recruits don't live and die by individual games like the fans do. Like you're a fan of Auburn and it's crushing your soul if you lose at home to a crappy team like that. And if you're a fan of, Alabama, you're just making fun of the Auburn people because they lost. Recruits don't give a crap. Like it doesn't really matter. You kind of want to see, it's more about trajectory. Sometimes a team could be down and a recruit can come in and say, hey, I can make them better. There's a lot of different reasons why. They're not going to live and die by every single loss. But I think it would help. Having a really crappy defense last year in sort of like a prove-it year wasn't good. And I think that hurt them kind of on the recruiting trail. But if like their defense looks a lot better, but maybe they lose a close game to Michigan, and if they lose like at home to Penn State by, a close one or something, I don't think the recruiting aspect, the players are going to be like, oh, well, it came down to this last field goal and USC lost to Penn State. That doesn't matter as much if they're like, wow, they generated a whole lot of sacks and they held Penn State to, 21 points, but USC just couldn't get the offense going. Like, then all right, well, the defense is way better than it was last year. I think there's different factors that, if you're a prospect, what you're caring about, it's a little bit different. And I think knowing that the signing period is going to be in December, you will get a feel for what this defense is like, what the offense is like without Caleb Williams. And I think all those things can kind of factor in, but not necessarily like, oh, they went, they're 7-4 right now. Like, no, that doesn't matter as much as like kind of what they look like.
Totally agree. It's a factor, but not the biggest one. I think money is huge, of course, now. NFL track record, pedigree is massive to a lot of these better players who have aspirations of getting to the league. It's one thing to make some NIL money in college, but if you can get to the NFL, get that second contract, of course, it's night and day. Facilities, eyeballs, Big Ten versus, if you're Oregon State or you're Washington State, and you're trying to recruit a kid who is looking at some other Big Ten schools, that's a major, major recruiting chip that the Big Ten schools have. So there's a million things that go into it. I think right now for a lot of kids, if they're elite recruits, you have to start with money and then the list goes on and on. But everyone's different, and I agree with you. If USC goes 0-12, then of course people will be like, okay, I'm not going there. But if they have a 7-5 season, I don't think that necessarily kills you for a lot of these top guys, especially if the defense is playing well and maybe they finish the year strong, then okay, fine. The first half of the year didn't look great, but we're building something here. Look how we ended the year. I do think that matters. But game to game, I'm with you 100%.
Yeah. So why don't we do this? Let's take a quick break. We'll come back and go over the spring transfers and what the players USC got, and then we'll talk a little bit Big Ten media days coming up and what we expect from that. So back in a minute, everybody. All righty, we're back here on the Peristyle Podcast. It's going to be back on YouTube. Make sure if you're not over at uscfootball.com, we love the fact that you're watching on YouTube or listening on your phone or wherever, your tablet, to the podcast. Maybe you're out for a jog, whatever you're doing, mowing the lawn, cleaning the living room, however you listen to their podcast. You're at the gym, love it. Or you're watching, even better, love that too. But you want to get over to uscfootball.com and check out all the info. Tons of stuff going on over there. The Peristyle is amazing. If you haven't been, message boards, yes, they're still a thing. It is absolutely bonkers. It's the oldest, largest, most popular, busiest USC message board on the planet. Built that back in the day, and it's hand coded, by the way, from in the late 90s, and now It's like this. Yeah, I'm old. So, but yeah, make sure you go check it out. It's a lot of interesting stuff going on. You can talk USC football 365 days a year, so make sure you go check it out. All right. We're going to talk about some transfers coming in. So USC fans love the fact that there's like one defensive tackle and 3 wide receivers coming in, right? Maybe we'll start with the defensive tackle because it was like one of the later commitments. Gavin Meyer from another guy from Wyoming for USC.
Ryan, I ranked the guys like we did back on February 28th. Do you want to go, in my opinion, most or least impactful to most?
Okay,
impactful?
let's do that. Yeah, let's do that.
Because on February 28th, we ranked all of the winter transfer portal guys. I can just run through my list quickly here. I had Hank Pepper at number 11, Jaden Richardson at number 10, Jaden Maeva at number 9, DeCarlos Nicholson at number 8, Achille Arnold at number 7, Nate Clifton at number 6, John Humphrey at number 5, Isaiah Rakes at number 4, who's no longer on the team, Easton Mascarenas at 3, Woody Marks at 2, Kamari Ramsey at 1. If that list pisses you off, then go back to the February 28th show and listen to the rationale there. I listened earlier today. I thought we had a really fun show that week, and I did the same thing for these 6 new spring transfer portal guys. I guess
I'm going to guess who your number 6, or we have 6, right?
Yeah, we have 6. Okay.
Is it Michael Lantz?
No. He's number 2.
What?
He's number
kicker?
2.
Okay.
Yes, for as bad as they've kicked the last couple of years,
Fair point.
I think kicker has a chance to make a big impact. Okay, let's start with 6. I have Charles Ross, the wide receiver from San Jose State. He caught 26 passes for 347 yards last season. Versatile guy. Talking to him after he signed, he's really, really hungry, really committed, really excited. Not an NIL guy, a guy who USC's taking a chance on, and he's honored that he's on this USC roster. He's going to fight for a spot. 1 year of eligibility left. I have him number 6 because I think he's the classic case of we need depth. We'll take a chance on you. A little bit similar to Jaden Richardson in the sense that, hey, if it doesn't work out, you're kind of lucky to be here in the first place. We won't have a problem burying you on the depth chart if we need to. Not saying that's going to happen. I hope Charles the best. He's a guy I covered when he was at Culver City High School. I really like his mindset. He's coming in hungry. He's really excited. But I think his margin for error is kind of small because he hasn't really produced at the highest level at these group of 5 schools, San Jose State and Nevada, where he's been at in the past. Now he's at USC. He'll get an opportunity. If he takes it, great. But if not, I could see someone bypassing him pretty quick.
All right. And then who do you have number 5?
I have another wide receiver, Kyle Ford.
Oh, my guy, Kyle Ford.
Making his triumphant return. And I have him at 5 because I just feel like we know who he is. He's solid, but never been over 400 yards receiving in his career at USC or at UCLA last year. 2 touchdowns in his career. Good player, but someone who I don't think is going to break out and have a massive, massive season. I think he's a good depth piece, and that's why they brought him back.
Yeah, I think for him, we've seen him have like a breakout game or two.
Yep.
Like he has that in him.
Gets hurt too sometimes.
Yeah, curious to see how he's, how he can use it. But it's good to see him back. He was I remember just covering him in the opening, and he was absolutely MVP. He was dominant. But yeah, they needed some bodies in the wide receiver spot, and I think you can certainly do worse than Kyle Ford. And I think there's definitely upside there. Like, was he going to wait for this point of his career to have like some kind of breakout season? He could potentially have it. You got those 4 sophomores that are probably going to get a lot of balls, but I think he's someone that can help out too, especially if a couple of guys get hurt. You could see him being comfortable in the starting rotation. He probably caught a lot of balls from Miller Moss over the years. So, I think it could work out, but I don't have an issue with you having number 5.
You may have missed it if you were on vacation. Did you see I retweeted an interview I did with Kyle back in 2018 when I was doing high school sports? It was in the summer at one of the passing tournaments. He's 3 times my size. I'm no beard, buzz cut, look like a baby. And it's a hilarious interview. I was glad to find it. A lot of USC people were like, this is crazy. It's probably like 3 weeks ago on my Twitter, and I tweet all the time. So if you can't find it,
I'll take a look.
I'll apologize.
I think I was overseas.
It's kind of funny to look back and like, Kyle, where are you going to go to school? Number 4, I have the other receiver. So I go receiver here. Jay Fair from Auburn. He was Auburn's 2nd leading receiver last year, which sounds great, but Auburn was pretty bad on offense, at least passing the ball. He only caught 31 passes for 324 yards. What I like about Jay Fair, Ryan, is that he has 2 years of eligibility left, and he was recruited to Auburn. So clearly, as a high school recruit, he impressed enough to get into the SEC. And you mentioned the upside of Kyle Ford. I kind of feel like we know what Kyle is. I feel like with Jay Fair, there might be a little bit more upside there. He's a wild card in my eyes. He's someone who I could see come in and have a big role, but I also wouldn't be totally surprised if, for whatever reason, maybe he gets hurt or the offense, it just doesn't work out for him. Someone passes him. I like the upside there, and I'd be willing to take a chance with him. So that's why I have him as the best receiver of the group.
Yeah. Okay. So you're really down on these receivers. Or there's not as because you got those 4 sophomores. You didn't really need.
I don't think you don't have any Jordan Addison types.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You didn't need any of these guys. I mean, you just need it for depth more than anything. So
maybe you did need him, but it's not like a Jordan Addison who won the freaking Bolitnikoff Award. And
yes.
You add him. It's like, okay, that's a guy. These are all good depth players who have potential, but we got to see that potential.
All right. I'm curious to see, since I know you're number 2, where you go with 3.
3, I have Greedy Vance, the defensive back from Florida State. I think these next 3 guys are going to play a ton, so that's why I have them ranked the way I do, and I can't say that about the receivers. Maybe one of those guys plays a lot, but I'm not really sure. So for Vance, he played in 14 games for a really good Florida State defense last year. He was in the rotation, made 5 starts. His snap counts kind of fluctuated. In one game, he had 8. Another game, he was up in the 40s, so up and down a little bit. I think he might be the starting nickel going into the season.
Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see Kamari Ramsey and Jalen Smith as the 2 deeper safeties. Jalen was the nickel last season. Maybe he plays a little bit deeper like he did in the Holiday Bowl where he did a great job. Don't know that for a fact, just me guessing. Jalen Smith certainly still could play nickel again this upcoming season, but I just have a feeling they brought Greedy Vance in for a specific reason, was good at Florida State last year, 1 year of eligibility remaining. I like him at that nickel spot, and then you can have Kamari, Jalen, and Akili Arnold rotating in at the deeper safety spots. So I think Vance is going to play a decent amount in a really talented secondary, so I have him 3.
All right. Yeah. I mean, if he's going to be a starter in the secondary that's already deep, that would be a pretty good addition. So you go kicker next.
I go kicker next, and when we did the show on February 28th, I kind of was crapping on long snapping a little bit, saying I didn't think special teams was as important, but I did have the caveat, if they bring in a kicker, I think that is important because that's a direct opportunity to score points. So Michael Lantz from Georgia Southern, 23 of 28 on field goals last year, but 17 of 18 from 39 yards and in. Dennis Lynch, last 2 seasons from 39 and in, missed 9 kicks. So that's just not going to get it done. 14 of 23. He was from 39 and in. I don't care if you're missing 40 and over. It's college. It's not the NFL. It's challenging to kick. There's a lot of pressure. But the 39 and in kicks, you got to make those. And Michael Lantz did at a really high level last season. Dennis Lynch, the past 2 seasons, has not. You got a good kicker. That makes a really big difference. People sort of tend to overlook that. I just think if USC is going to be good, they need a good kicker because you can win some tight games in that area, and that's why I have him at number 2. I don't want to overlook that, or I don't want to overlook the importance of that position. I think kickers, even though some people don't think they're true football players, which I don't, I think they're true football players. It's in a really important spot.
For sure. And he was coached by Clay Helton last year.
Yes, I buried the lead.
Yes, you did bury the lead there. For Georgia Southern, I was wondering, I'm like, I didn't know who his special teams coordinator was, so I looked it up. A guy named Turner West, who played in the NFL. I guess he was at the Citadel. His special teams were ranked among the most efficient in the country. So he seems like a pretty good special teams coach. Clay Helton had hired some not so good ones when he was at USC. So I don't know much about Turner West, but looks like he's probably a pretty good special teams coach. And that would help with Michael Lantz being at USC. But yeah, it's certainly an important position. You like Dennis Lynch a lot, but there were some deficiencies there. They've brought in some special teamers over the last several years that seemed like they'd be pretty good on paper, and then they just weren't as good. Like guys that can boom punts in practice, and then they don't boom punts in games. And you're like, what is going on? And then the fans yell at us. We're like, I watched him boom punts in practice, and then he didn't do that in games. So, yeah, we'll see. Adding a kicker there, what that will do.
Just got to make those sure thing kicks. That was really what stood out to me. And shout out to the USC staff for addressing a need, because I think special teams can sometimes get buried under the rug. We've heard USC fans repeatedly, we need a coordinator. I like that they didn't think Lynch did a good enough job last year, so they brought in someone to push him, and I think Michael Lantz will be the kicker next season.
Okay, then the last one.
Yes.
I tried to start with this one.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Sometimes you go to dessert first.
Nothing wrong with that. So Gavin Meyer didn't play a ton at Wyoming last year in terms of starting and being out there on every down. He was out there for 351 defensive snaps, didn't start too many games. For comparison, Barry Alexander, the middleman of USC's defense, played 660 defensive snaps. But I have Meyer here at number one because you just needed someone on the inside of that defensive line, especially after Isaiah Rakes left, especially after Dejan Lafitte left, who wasn't really supposed to play that much anyway this season. But you lost two bodies on the defensive line when the hope was you were supposed to bring in two more. So in my opinion, they were down four. They only bring in one, whatever. It's just so badly needed. Feels a massive need with us, Isaiah Rakes gone, and I think he's going to play a ton. So that's why I have him at number one. He graded out really well on Pro Football Focus last year, if that means something to you. So we'll see how he does, taking a leap up in competition. I'm rooting for him because I think he's a really important piece for that defense.
All right. So those are the 6 new transfers for the spring and the spring window. I believe my count, I have 82. So I think the 2, I didn't have Charles Ross or Gavin Meyer on my initial scholarship distribution chart. You can check out at uscfootball.com. I'll kind of go through it. We're figuring out a few classes. I talked to a representative from USC this morning, so I'll have an update on one of the players on the roster that I was trying to get a clarification on what class they would actually be in. I think even what Shotgun had said about Gavin Meyer, I had a question with him because it looked like he played in 2020, 2 games, doesn't count. And I believe he only played 4 games in 2021, so that would be a redshirt year. So I think he can be, I have him listed as a redshirt junior for this season. So I believe his first 2 years did not count. One was COVID, one was a redshirt. But I'm double checking on that. So I think you might have Gavin Meyer for 2 years potentially.
And that really helps a lot as well. I wonder if he has a big year, would he jump to the NFL? So Shotgun has him as a 5th-year senior, but I'm glad you're getting that classification.
I'm trying,
clarification.
I'm trying to get it clarified.
Clarification.
From what I saw, that was on the Wyoming website. It said he only played 4 games in 2021. So, but there's always a little thing. Even, I was talking to USC, and I'll put something in the war room kind of about this, but there was questions about if a guy had enough games to redshirt or not, and it can be kind of confusing sometimes, even for the schools that there's a lot of dudes coming in and out of games. Some of them wear the same number. There can be some kind of confusion. I wouldn't be with Gavin Meyer, but so we'll see. If he did really only play 4 games in 2021, I believe that he could redshirt and then kind of go from there.
They need all the help they can get there, Ryan. So maybe that would be a blessing.
If he has an extra year of eligibility and he's contributing, then
maybe like a Jamil Muhammad, solid year last year, come back for another year. We'll see.
Okay. So those are the transfers. I want to talk about Big Ten Media Days real quick. They are scheduled to be taking place 3 days. They'll have 6 schools each of the 3 days, July 23rd, 24th, and 25th in Indianapolis, Indiana. No more Vegas, which sucks. Hopefully they move it to Vegas. Lucas Oil Stadium. So some big where they do the combine and all that kind of crap. On day 1, you have Illinois, Northwestern, Ohio State, Purdue, Rutgers, and Wisconsin. So kind of a lot of crap to go with Ohio State. You got some Wisconsin too, but
what's our plan? Are we doing all 3 days, or are we just going for USC?
We got to figure it out.
Okay.
I'm not sure yet. I'm going to see when Chris is going. He's going on for CBS. We're going on our own dime, so or you're going on my dime. So then we'll figure out what we're going to do. Maybe we can crash on Chris's couch or floor or something. I'm not sure. Okay, then day 2. This is one that involves USC. Iowa. No offense, good defense. Michigan State with Jonathan Smith there coming in from the Pac-12. Nebraska, Penn State, UCLA, and USC. So more brand names on this day 2 than you have in day 1. But you have probably the biggest brand on day 1. And then day 3, you have Indiana, Maryland, Michigan, Minnesota, a lot of M's. Then Oregon and Washington. So that'll kind of wrap that one up. So Michigan, the headliner there, but you got the Ducks and you got Washington coming in for day 3. So yeah, I don't know. What do you have a preference of when you want to go in there? You want to see the whole thing, or it could be kind of boring?
Yeah, to me, media day is about getting the most USC stuff, and I'm sure there are interesting players and coaches and questions I'd have, but I care more about watching those other teams on the field than I do about learning about their program a few weeks before the season starts. You can read a lot about what these other teams have and what they don't have and the storylines and stuff. I don't know if I need to hear it straight from the horse's mouth. I'm there for USC, and I'm there for the good food, and I'm there for the free hotel. No, just kidding.
Yeah. I don't know about good food. We'll see how good the food is.
Well, doesn't everyone go to a great steakhouse? That's all I've heard.
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
You're not in the know on that?
I haven't paid too much attention. I'll talk to Bruce and Bruce Feldman and see what he says. I kind of need to pay attention because the Podcast of Champions is basically now a Big Ten podcast.
Maybe you need to be there for all 3.
Yeah, potentially. I got to talk to David Wood, see if he wants to go too.
You guys can't play video poker though at the end of the night. I'm sorry.
No, is there like a riverboat casino or something around there? Is Indianapolis on a river? I don't know. I don't know much about the Midwest, to be honest.
Me neither.
But yeah, so we'll figure that out. But yes, we were gonna just kind of cover the Big Ten, the Pac-12 teams in 2024. And we realized that was going to be pretty tough and not that exciting. We did a kind of a spring recap or like off-season recap with every, former Pac-12, well, I guess current Pac-12 now, but soon to be former Pac-12 schools. And it didn't go over that well. Did people really give a crap about Cal? Not really. So we've said we're going to just focus on the Big Ten. If there's big newsy stuff that's Colorado or something from Prime, like we'll probably, people probably still care, but we're going to focus more on the Big Ten for the Podcast of Champions, and we'll come off as the foremost experts.
Keeping the name
Podcast of Champions, yeah. Still the champs. Like actually, the Big Ten now is the most national championships.
Okay, so perfect.
Yeah, because just USC and UCLA would give you the most, I think.
Yeah.
But I think Michigan's got a bunch. Ohio State has a bunch. Oregon has some, so I think, I think they by far have the most national championships of any conference now. Just USC and UCLA are number 2 and 3. They each have over 100. So just adding those 2 schools is going to, you would probably make any conference the number 1 conference. But Stanford has a lot. They're going to the ACC. I don't know how many they have, but they probably have a good amount too. Okay.
Questions, comments?
Yeah. What's the deal? We'll figure out what's going on here. Let's see. We have a couple emails. I want to put this question up in the chat. This one is from Gixer Squid. How much, if any, impact will the new conference impact ticket prices? I'm the worst. When people ask me about anything game day stuff, I don't have any clue. Like, I don't know what tickets cost. I don't know where you get them. I don't know when they go on sale, but we'll see what you thought. I'm shocked to see the Penn State game going for more than Michigan at home. Fight on at Inside Troy. He said fight on to me on Twitter. Yeah.
Is that because Michigan just has so many damn seats?
Maybe. I don't know. I think the impact is going to be there's bigger brands coming to the Coliseum.
So that would make me think they're
going to cost
games
more.
Will cost more, yeah.
I don't know what – I mean, I guess Michigan is a huge stadium. It's an away game, but I'm assuming the average Michigan game might cost less than the average USC game. I'm not sure. But it's hard to compare, the 2 games when one's played on the other side of the country in a different stadium. I would think on the Michigan side, the USC game would be on the higher end of what games would be. With teams coming to the big house, the USC game's probably going to get more than if they play Indiana or something, But I'm terrible at that stuff. We get press credentials, and I never know what, people ask me all the time, when do those go on sale? I'm like, I never deal with tickets. Don't have tickets. Don't know what's going on with tickets. There's other people that do. I just never do. I don't like ticket stuff. I don't like watch lists. And I don't like bowl projections. They're all crap to me.
I don't like bowl projections either. I'm with you on that.
Yeah. I think watch lists are terrible. Marquise Lee won they put like 1,000 people on the Biletnikoff watch list, and Marquise Lee wasn't one of them, and he won. So like once you're like, you can't even, you give me 1,000 names, and it's not 1,000, but it's like 100 something names, and you can't pick the guy. Like I don't need a watch list. So
I agree with that too. We still write him up, but I agree with you.
Right, we'll create content on them, but I personally don't really care. And we have another question that I don't care about as well. We'll get to.
Great.
So this is from Miguel. He wrote in, can we please get a conversation going about the lack of tradition on the uniforms? Since when do we wear black socks and yellow compression pants tights? I miss the classic all-white socks and accessories. Love the podcast. Great work, you guys. Thank you. Miguel. Like they could come out wearing like rainbow socks and I wouldn't even notice. But people like...
You would notice rainbows.
The shoelaces are different. And I'm like, what? Like, I really don't care. I like tradition in Miguel, but I would say USC is on the more traditional side than most. They don't even put the names on the uniforms. But having like a different colored sock, I don't think is like throwing tradition to the wind or anything. I don't know. Is it anything you kind of notice?
Nothing I've noticed.
Yeah.
Sorry, Miguel.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know about the tights. I mean, you want the yellow pants, right? I know Coach Harvey Hyde gets off on he goes off. Maybe I misspoke. Goes off on pregame stuff where guys come out and they're all wearing different things, or when they're kind of doing their warm-ups, and he would like them all to be dressed the same, and they're not always are. And sometimes that's a sign of just like, having your crap together. I don't know if you think, I kind of agree with that. I'd like to see that. But if they change the sock color, it's, whatever the cleats, the shoelaces, like I don't know what to tell you. That's just not I don't notice that kind of stuff. You get in trouble, when I was married, not noticing certain things, like little things like that. Like, I just got my hair done. Oh, sorry, But some people know, like, oh my God, look at the socks. I'm like, what? I'm not looking at the socks. I don't care about the socks, but people do. I'm just not one of them.
A little bit different here. I don't like the guys who wave the towels on the sideline. That kind of
that's awful.
Frustrates me.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that either. It's one of those things where like there's 12 college football games a year. You get like 6 or 7 of them in the Coliseum. There should be a level of excitement. Like the towel, if you're waving your towel is helping, I don't think then you have a problem. Like, I don't think that's the way it should be. Like, I'm waving the towel. I need to get some excitement here. It's like, no, I don't.
Just looks manufactured. Just you could be excited without doing that.
Right. And I guess along the same line, like DJ wise, as an old guy, I'm not like, whatever. I mean, I'd rather more band and less DJ, but the DJ does get, I think, a lot of the young players sort of into things. But my analogy would be sort of like, if you've ever gone to like a club that's like either late or early, so there's not a lot of people there or whatever reason, and the DJ's like really into it and trying to get, like put your heads like, but there's not that many people there. It sounds bad. It just sounds pathetic when you're like trying to pump.
Put your heads up.
And you're like, there's nobody
There's 3 people here.
Yeah, like we're just, maybe you could, like, you don't have to act like it's full. You acting like it's full when it's not full makes it seem less full, And you like waving the towel like that, trying to get the crowd up, makes it seem less exciting, if that makes sense.
Great off-season topics here.
Yes.
I love these.
I love it too. Okay. Let me see if we have any questions here. We got one more email. Joe Boyd in the chat is very mad. A lot of collective talk going on in the chat, by the way, the YouTube chat. John writes in, what do you think of Nebraska's athletic director's comments on NIL? He said that the Oregon Ducks and Ohio State Buckeyes have NIL budgets of $23 million per year, while Nebraska's budget is less than $10 million, and his concerns about an unfair advantage in college football. He thinks the athletic department being able to share money with their athletes would soon make collectives go away. Is he just trying to put Nebraska's fan base on notice that they need to give more to NIL, like Ryan Day did at Ohio State, to huge success, or is he really wanting to end NIL? And there was a story here that he sent a link to, but those are, I think, the points from it. I haven't read the story yet, but he says, fight on from John. I haven't seen this one yet. Have you seen it?
It just all goes back to the weak leadership of the NCAA. How much power do they have? How much power can they use, if that makes sense? It's a problem if you have two premier teams able to operate with a bigger budget than other schools. So I don't fault the Nebraska AD for bringing that up at all. It's like in European soccer. Manchester City's won the championship in England 6 of the last 7 seasons. I wouldn't be surprised if you have some uber-rich team in college football go off and win a bunch of titles in a row. If the wealth discrepancy is that big consistently, it really does make a difference. So I start with enforcement, and then I think when we have a conversation like this, Ryan, the more I think, okay, we're going to get the 32 biggest brands, and it's just going to be different than everything else. And that's not what I want to see happen. But if people are going to continue to say it's unfair, which it is, and nothing really can be done about it, I don't know how you don't get to a place where the biggest brands are all in the same league and they all operate with the same financial rules and regulations, because it really isn't fair. And in order for a change to happen, I don't think the NCAA can do anything. You'd need a complete overhaul, and that starts with maybe getting the biggest brands in their own league.
And that could happen too. I think so. A couple of things here. One, who's the athletic director at Nebraska? Troy Dannon.
Yep.
So he was a dude that went to Washington for like a cup of coffee. Not super impressed with him. I'm not going to listen to much of what he has to say. You know, I talked to people at Washington. It was definitely not a good fit. Maybe that wasn't all his fault, but yeah, I wouldn't, just from my surface knowledge, I wouldn't put him up in the upper echelon of ADs that I would trust. They said something, I'm going to listen to what he has to say. I think the NCAA, with this settlement in the House case and coming in to pay players $21 million a year, or whatever it is, that proposal, I think they wanted that to put an end to collectives. And we talked about this last week. I don't think it will. It just, now you can pay $21 million from the school, but do you think Tennessee or Ohio State or Oregon is going to say, oh, we don't need to pay players now because we got to take, no, they're going to continue to do that too. And that'll be the extra part. So this is only going to, go up until the point where there's, it's a market. So if Oregon keeps pumping money into the football program, paying players, and it doesn't become fruitful, they're probably going to stop, But if it's working, then you're going to probably keep doing it. And then you better play catch up, or, you're going to be falling behind. So I think the intent was this would take the place of collectives, but there's nothing that's going to stop the collectives. They said they're going to put in guidelines for has to be true NIL. Who's to say what somebody should be worth? What's Patrick Mahomes worth for a State Farm commercial? I don't know. Does he get paid? What if he gets paid more than Aaron Rodgers? You say, well, how can you get paid more than Aaron Rodgers? Well, he's Patrick Mahomes. I don't know. There's no one that can say what you're worth, as far as what someone willing to pay. If you want to buy a piece of art for $100 or $1 million, I don't know, just if someone's willing to pay that, you're willing to pay that. So I don't think the collectives are going away. It's just going to kind of put, the basis, of we don't know the details yet, but you're going to get, a base salary, I guess, of $21 million. And then whatever collectives play are going to be over and above that. Maybe it goes more towards portal guys. Maybe it's more towards the recruiting side. And what the schools are paying is all, the current players, and you can have collectives completely focus on here's money to get you into school. And then once you get here, you'll get paid by the school. I don't know. We're not sure how this is going to turn out, but probably for Troy Dannon, trying to get more money for Nebraska from NIL. And they got a lot of boosters. That's all they live for. So you should be able to get money. Also, don't trust them. Also, who the hell knows?
And that's such a good point about the worth of a player, because you're absolutely right, Ryan. The $20 million by the school in-house is the $20 million. Say collectives are gone, whatever. What's going to stop a fan of USC who owns a car dealership that, okay, you can do a couple commercials for me and I'll pay you all this money, but I don't really care about the commercials. I want to help the team win. I can give you even more money to do a few commercials. Maybe I'm a billionaire. I'll give you $5 million in addition to what you're getting from the $20 million pool at USC. You're absolutely right. That is a player capitalizing on their name, image, and likeness, but it's a workaround. And they're getting paid more money. In theory, it's because of their name, image, and likeness to do these car commercials. But the truth is, it's a guy who's a fan of USC who just wants to help the team win and pay them even more. So it's a facade, and it's a legal facade. So I don't know how you would go around that.
Yeah, like if you're like, hey, I want Nicolas Cage at my birthday party. I'm some multimillionaire, billionaire guy, and it's like, I gave him $5 million to show up to my birthday party because I just wanted Nicolas Cage at my birthday. People would say you're an idiot. Like, but if that's what he didn't want to come to my birthday party, so I kept raising it till I point that he said yes. I mean, yeah, I don't think any of that's going to be enforceable, and anything that could go to court, the NCAA loses.
Because then it's not pay for play technically if it's do one of these commercials, and that's why I paid you all this money, not pay for play. I feel like it's such an easy workaround, so we'll see how they solve it. Smarter people than me are working on all this stuff, but I don't know how you can enforce that.
And we've talked to the people at, especially at House of Victory. They have a system where like, okay, you're paying whatever player gets. If he gets like $50,000, they're like, he needs to do a couple things. One of them's coming on this podcast. They'll go to a boys and girls club. Like, so say he gets $50,000, he does like 4 events, and like, so he goes to a girls and boys club. That would be like $12,500 to show up to that. Does that seem like excessive? I don't know. I mean, what if he's getting paid $250,000? Now he's getting like $50,000 to show up at hey, they're doing a service. They're helping the charity. It's hard to say like what that would be, worth. But we know the way USC does it now. When they are paying these players, there's like check boxes. They're making sure like they're doing something. It doesn't have to be they're going to go dig ditches or whatever, or like paint the curbs around USC. They're doing events and things like that. But they're making sure that they're doing something. So there's a service or behind the payment that they're getting. And I think for when the athletic department's paying them, they're not going to need that. They're just getting paid because they're part of the program and everything. I think going forward, you're still going to have those check boxes. Like, say Juju Lewis, like somehow he gets $1 million from USC's collective. It's House of Victory, whatever it is. Then he's going to go, like maybe he has 5 events or 6 events he has to go to during the semester or during the season or the year. Like each one of them's worth like $150,000. Like, I don't know. But yeah, like it's, you have this superstar quarterback, and it makes a difference if he's showing up to one of these events or whatever it is. So yeah, I still think you're going to see the collective stuff happening. But there'll be like this kind of base salary, I think. However it's distributed, however Title IX gets involved, we don't know. But I still think collectives are going to be around.
I'm looking forward to talking about X's and O's in the future.
Yes.
Off season, it's a lot of money, a lot of NIL. The YouTube commenters are going crazy. I had to shut my laptop. I couldn't keep up with it. I'm excited for some real football, which getting closer, Ryan. I think under 100 days. We're
getting close, yes. But it's great stuff. Great to see you guys all back on YouTube. Thanks so much to everyone out there. First of all, to my co-host, to Connor, doing a great job, crushing the team stuff, doing recruiting stuff, getting guys on the phone, which is never easy after visits. Gerard gave him props on the text thread.
Gerard.
So he doesn't hand those out lightly, So good stuff there. And thanks to everyone out there for listening, continuing through the off season. All of our subscribers, everybody that's out there. If you're watching on YouTube or listening, we do really appreciate you being part of the show. We're at least doing like 2 shows a week during the off season because Composite 2-Star, those are going to come out on Thursday mornings now. They were doing Wednesday mornings for a while. We'll probably still do our show Wednesdays. I'm going to be out of town next Wednesday, so we'll probably do like a Thursday show next week. But yeah, we'll keep them going, and keep sending in the questions, podcast@uscfootball.com, and let us know what you want to hear and talk about, because we got a couple months before fall camp starts, and things get a little
crazy.
Get crazy. Yeah. We'll see if any roster changes happen. Like I said, it looks like they have a few spots open. Add some guys. I don't know if there's going to be a defensive lineman ferry coming and bringing USC another big body on the defensive side, but we'll see about that too. So good stuff. Connor, great to see you again.
Thank you. With the Elite 11 next week, we should have some more Julian Lewis updates, so people can't get enough of those.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you to Connor. Thank you to everyone out there. Like I said, hope you all enjoyed the show, and we will talk to you next time.